Hello, wonderful viewers. A warm, heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you. I'm your storyteller, James, and I'm beyond delighted to have you here with me. May your heart always overflow with love, joy, and endless blessings. May your days be bright, and may love find its way into your life in the most beautiful, unexpected ways. Today, I bring you a story that will touch your soul, a tale of deep emotions, passionate love, and unwavering devotion. This isn't just any love story, it's a journey of two hearts overcoming obstacles to find their forever. So I invite you to stay with me until the very end, because every moment of this story is special, every chapter more enchanting than the last. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a single heartfelt tale. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this beautiful, charming, and powerful love story together. The Silent CEO's Lonely World. Zaden Holt was a man of mystery, elegance, and silence. He glided through life like a shadow, seen, admired, but never truly understood. To the world, he was the epitome of success. His name resounded in boardrooms like a storm, and Holt Enterprises stood as a towering corporate empire. Zaden was the perfect picture of the self-made man, tall, broad-shouldered, his chiseled jawline complemented by a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes were deep, stormy gray, unreadable and cold to those around him. His hair, sharp and precise, was always styled to perfection, like the man himself. Wherever he went, he drew attention, though he never sought it. But beneath the tailored suits and luxury watches was a man cloaked in silence, an impenetrable fortress of emotion that no one dared to breach. For 8 long years, Zaden lived in that silence. It wrapped itself around every corner of his life, thick and unspoken like a ghost that lingered just out of reach. He resided in a mansion that overlooked the city skyline, a glass fortress perched high on the cliffs. Grand, intimidating, but not a home. It was a monument to his isolation. The halls echoed with emptiness, and the cold marble floors beneath his feet seemed to amplify the silence. He had staff, a butler, chefs, and assistants, but their greetings were met with indifference. There was no laughter, no warmth, only the occasional clink of his glass as he sipped whiskey while staring blankly out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Zaden's heart had once burned with passion. He had once loved deeply, so deeply that he had believed forever was real. Her name was Amelia. She had been the sun in his universe, the one woman who had managed to pierce the walls he had so carefully built. But betrayal came swiftly and mercilessly. Amelia had not only cheated on him, she had done so with his business rival, a man who had used their affair to strip Zaden of one of his most important deals. That betrayal had left a wound that had never fully healed. Since then, Zaden had stopped believing in love, trust, or anything close to intimacy. Business became his refuge. Meetings replaced conversations, and contracts replaced companionship. The man who once smiled with his eyes now simply existed. His staff feared him, respected him, but no one truly connected with him. His office was always silent. His orders were brief, and no one dared ask him personal questions. He worked long hours, not because he had to, but because it was easier than facing the vast emptiness of his mansion. Sleep came in short bursts, and he often sat alone in the dark, staring at the dying embers of his fireplace. He had memorized every painting on his wall and every tick of the antique clock in his study. Loneliness had become his identity. Then came Carter. Carter had been Zaden's best friend since college, a rare soul who still had access to the man beneath the layers of cold indifference. Carter was everything Zaden wasn't: loud, charming, and endlessly hopeful. He hadn't given up on love, and he hated seeing his friend fade away under the weight of heartbreak. "You need to meet someone, man," Carter would often say, only to be met with Zaden's dry, silent stare. But Carter wasn't the type to give up. One rainy evening, with the city lights flickering beneath the clouds, Carter barged into Zaden's office with a grin and a proposal. "You're going on a blind date," he declared. Zaden barely looked up from his laptop. "That's ridiculous," he replied, his voice flat. But Carter was undeterred. He dropped a small card on the desk. "Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. I've already booked the place. You're meeting her. Just show up. You don't even have to talk if you don't want to." Just go, Zayden scoffed, rubbing his temples. What part of not interested do you not understand? Carter leaned forward, his voice softening. Zayden, you've been alone for 8 years. You're not a machine, you're a man. Somewhere deep inside, I know you still want connection. One dinner won't kill you. Maybe it'll help. Zayden stared at the card long after Carter had left. It lay there, an invitation to a life he no longer believed in. He picked it up and read the name of the restaurant. La Veranda. Upscale, private, quiet. The kind of place he might have taken someone once upon a time. He shook his head. This was absurd. Love was a distraction, a liability. Feelings made men weak. He was above that now. But as the night deepened and the rain tapped against the glass walls of his home, something strange stirred within him, a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. What harm could it do? He wouldn't fall in love. He wouldn't even try. Just one dinner, one conversation. If he hated it, he could leave early. He had full control, as always. Yet the next day he found himself dressing with more care than usual. A charcoal suit, perfectly tailored to his frame, and a dark maroon tie that brought out the storm in his eyes. His beard was trimmed to perfection. He checked the time more than once, though he would never admit to being nervous. By 6:30, he was in his black Maserati, driving through the rain-slick streets, his heart curiously quiet. He arrived at La Veranda 10 minutes early, a first for him. The host recognized him immediately and led him to the private dining room. The room was softly lit and elegant, with a single table set for two. A bottle of vintage wine waited, already breathing. Zayden sat, adjusting his cufflinks, unsure of what he was doing there. He had survived betrayal, loneliness, and silence. He didn't need anyone. But as the minutes passed and the clock struck 7, he felt something strange. Anticipation. Not for the food, not for the conversation. Something else. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her face. But something deep within him stirred. Just a flicker, just enough to make the silence feel different tonight. Less heavy, more expectant. Then the door opened. And there she was. Hyra. Zayden leaned back in the seat, letting the gentle hum of the car become his focus. The bustling noise of the city outside felt distant, as though it had no place in his world anymore. His mind, once racing with the logistics of empire building and boardroom maneuvers, was now consumed with a single thought. Hyra. Her words lingered with him, threading their way through his thoughts like a delicate melody. Being real is more important than being perfect. He exhaled slowly, his chest tightening as he remembered the way she looked at him, not as the billionaire CEO, but as a man. The vulnerability she had invited him to share felt like an unspoken gift. The way she spoke of love, of realness. It was as if she had unlocked a door within him that he hadn't even known was there. He turned his head, glancing at the empty seat beside him. There was a strange ache in his chest, a feeling that had been foreign to him for a long time. Zayden wasn't sure when it had happened, the slow unraveling of the walls he had carefully built around his heart. But somewhere between the flicker of candlelight and the quiet words exchanged, it had begun. He thought back to the way she'd asked him questions no one else dared to. Not about his wealth, not about his success, but about him, the man behind the title. There had been no pretense, no judgment, just the kind of presence that made him feel seen. A sudden longing filled him, one he hadn't felt in years. He wanted to know her more, her childhood, her dreams, the parts of her life that made her who she was. He wanted to share his life with her, but not the life of a CEO, just the life of a man who had discovered, perhaps for the first time, what it meant to truly connect. The driver took a sharp turn, and Zayden realized that he hadn't even noticed they were nearing his penthouse. The familiar skyline of the city greeted him, but it felt like a world he had temporarily stepped away from. The busy life of power lunches, conference calls, and gala events was still there, but for the first time, he wasn't consumed by it. Zayden's fingers rested on his phone, but he didn't reach for it. Instead, he let his hand fall to his lap, the quiet buzz of his notifications going unnoticed. Hyra's smile still danced in his mind, and he imagined her voice, gentle, calm, and wise. There was something about her that made him want to shed his armor, something about her that made him want to just be himself. When they had said goodbye, it hadn't been a typical parting. It hadn't been rushed, but rather it had been a soft promise without words, a connection that didn't need to be rushed or labeled. He didn't need her to respond with anything grand. All he needed was to hold on to that moment, to savor the quiet, to let it stretch into something real. He had never expected to meet someone like her, not in his world, but now it felt as if she was the key to something he hadn't even known he was missing. The car slowed as it pulled up to his building, and Zayden hesitated for a moment before stepping out. He stood there for a moment, eyes lost in the skyline, the cool evening air brushing against his skin, and for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. No rush, no noise, just the quiet of the night wrapping itself around him. And then with a soft sigh, Zayden smiled. He knew he couldn't let this feeling fade. Not now. Not ever. His forehead gently against hers. The space between them, small, sacred, full of possibility. He closed his eyes for a beat, breathing her in, letting the stillness say what words couldn't. Her breath caught, but she didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned into him, her fingers brushing his wrist, anchoring them to this moment, suspended in time. "I won't," he whispered, voice low and rough, like it had been dragged across every hope he'd ever dared not to speak aloud. "I don't know where this goes, Hyra. I just know I don't want to go another day, pretending I'm fine without this. Without you." She exhaled, a shaky sound that felt like the wind finally exhaling too. "Then don't," she said, barely more than a breath. "Don't pretend." He pulled back just enough to see her eyes again, those luminous, unguarded eyes that saw straight through him. And there, in the gentle gravity of her gaze, he felt the shift happen. Not a grand epiphany, not fireworks, just something softer, steadier. The quiet knowing that everything he'd built, every part of his carefully sculpted world, was about to change. Because of her, because of this. Because for once in his life, Zayden Hale wasn't chasing power or prestige or profit. He was chasing presence, real connection, the kind that didn't come with contracts, only choice. And in that quiet space between goodbye and goodnight, he chose her. There was fear now, because Zayden finally understood what he could lose if he let this slip away. Back in his penthouse, the skyline shimmered just as it had the night before. But something had changed. This time he saw it. This time it felt alive, as if the world had always been full of colors he'd never noticed, until her presence painted them in. He undressed slowly, placed his phone on the nightstand, and stared out at the stars. A smile curved his lips, this time not for a memory, but for a future. Tomorrow he'd see her again. And the idea of waking up to a new day wasn't exhausting anymore. It was exhilarating, because with every breath he took, he knew it now. Zayden Hale was falling for Hyra. And it wasn't a passing crush. It wasn't infatuation. It felt like destiny, wearing her smile. The sun had dipped beyond the horizon by the time Hyra stepped onto Zayden's balcony. A gentle evening breeze whispered across her skin, and the city lights below glittered like reflections of the stars above. She hugged herself lightly, wrapped in the quiet hush of dusk. Behind her, the soft clink of glass. Zayden appeared, carrying 2 steaming cups of tea. The scent of jasmine and mint rose into the night. He handed her one with that soft, half-confident smile he'd begun to wear only around her. Equal parts brave and bashful, a stark contrast to the man the world knew. "Thank you," she murmured as their fingers brushed. The contact was brief, but it sparked a warmth that traveled up her chest. They stood in silence for a while, sipping tea, gazing at the sky like it was the most fascinating painting ever made. It wasn't awkward, it was full, thoughtful, brimming with the kind of things that didn't need to be said out loud. After a moment, Zayden pulled a blanket from the lounge chair and offered it to her. But instead of taking it, Hyra stepped closer, wordlessly inviting him to share it. His breath caught just for a second, but he moved beside her, draped the blanket over them both. Their shoulders touched, their warmth mingled. Hearts beat quietly beside each other. Hyra tilted her head back and exhaled. The stars mirrored in her eyes. "When I was little," she said softly, My mom used to sit on our rooftop in the village. It wasn't fancy, just a tin roof. But the stars, they still looked beautiful. Zayden turned slightly, watching her speak. The way her lips moved, the way emotions danced across her face, grief and tenderness weaving together like sunlight and shadow. She used to tell me stories, real ones, not fairy tales, about love, about loss. Sometimes she'd sing too. There was this one song. Her voice trailed off. She scrolled briefly on her phone and hit play. A soft, aching melody drifted into the air, part lullaby, part prayer. The language was unfamiliar to Zayden, but the feeling was not. Love, loss, hope. It curled through the night like incense. Hyra's hand trembled slightly. Zayden looked at her and saw tears glistening in her eyes. Not falling, but close. He didn't ask what the words meant. He didn't need to. Instead, he gently took her phone, set it on the balcony rail, and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She didn't resist. She didn't resist. She leaned into him like she belonged there, like her sorrow could finally exhale against the safety of his heartbeat. The music continued. The city whispered below. The stars blinked overhead. But time stilled. Zayden buried his face in her hair. Lavender and something uniquely her wrapped around him like a memory he hadn't lived yet. His hand moved to her back, drawing quiet circles. He said nothing, because silence, filled with presence, was louder than comfort. Inside he was chaos. Everything was shifting. The stars weren't distant anymore. They were witnesses, because he'd known beauty, he'd known desire, he'd known charm, but nothing like this. Nothing that made his chest feel too small for his heart. Nothing that made him want to protect her, not just her body, but her soul, her memories, her grief. Nothing that made him feel like he'd been walking asleep, until now. Hyra sniffled softly, and he kissed the top of her head, without thinking, only feeling. Instinct. Care. She looked up, eyes wet, lips parted, and in that moment, he forgot everything. Every merger, every mask, every dollar. All he saw was her, and something broke open inside him, something terrifying and beautiful. He didn't say it, not yet, but it hit him like a silent explosion. He was in love, not the kind that gets posted for likes, not the seasonal kind, but the kind that takes root in the soul, the kind that rewrites the architecture of a man's heart. He cupped her cheek, brushed away the tear that had finally slipped free. "She would have liked you," Hero whispered, voice raw. "My mom, she would have liked the way you listen." His throat tightened. He wanted to say, "I'll listen for the rest of my life," but the words felt too heavy, too soon. So he just held her closer. The song faded. Only the hush of wind and the soft cadence of their breaths remained. They stayed like that long after the stars had taken their throne. The tea forgotten, the blanket slipping, but they didn't care. Zayden memorized the weight of her trust, the way she let him see her sadness, the quiet courage in her vulnerability. He had spent years building walls, fortresses of logic and strategy, staying in control. But Hyra had walked in with no armor, just grace, kindness. And somehow, she disarmed him completely. She was softness in a world that worshipped sharpness. She was heart in a world of calculation. And he knew. This wasn't fleeting. This wasn't a spark. It was a fire he wanted to tend for the rest of his life. "Thank you," she said suddenly. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For not making me feel alone with this memory," she whispered. "For just being here." He nodded once, pressed his forehead to hers. "Always," he whispered, and he meant it. She smiled, small, but real. It undid him. That smile was his favorite constellation. That moment, wrapped in memory, moonlight, and music, wasn't just romantic. It was sacred. It was the night he stopped doubting. The night he stopped pretending. The night he knew, without question, that he was entirely, hopelessly, and beautifully in love with Hyra. "Always meant to be," he whispered, his voice a tender ache wrapped in peace. "You didn't change me, Hyra. You found me and loved the man underneath all the armor. You loved me before I even knew how to love myself." She exhaled slowly, her breath mingling with the rhythm of the sea and the warmth of his chest beneath her ear. Her fingers traced the fine fabric of his shirt, but her heart traced something deeper. Every scar he had ever tried to hide, every silent wound he had once tucked behind a fortress of suits and silence. "I didn't find you," she murmured, a tear slipping into his collarbone. "You found me too." Zayden's arms tightened around her, a protective cocoon in a world that no longer frightened either of them. The stars continued to scatter their silver blessings across the dark velvet sky, and the waves played their lullaby with ancient patience. In that moment, no press headline mattered, no past mistake lingered. Only this, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely place, now wrapped in a quiet that thundered louder than applause. Eventually, he tilted her chin gently, their gazes locking once more. "So, fiancé," he said with a teasing glint in his eyes, "how do you feel about a midnight swim?" She laughed, soft and sparkling. "Only if you carry me in." Zayden stood with a grin, scooping her up effortlessly into his arms, her laughter ringing across the empty beach like wind chimes. And as he carried her into the surf, fully clothed and completely alive, Hyra realized something she hadn't yet put into words. She hadn't just said yes to a man tonight. She had said yes to healing, yes to becoming, yes to a love that had rewritten every rule. And as the waves kissed their legs and the moon watched in quiet approval, Zayden twirled her once in the water and whispered with a grin pressed to her temple, "This is just the beginning, Mrs. Soon-to-be Malik." Though modest in size, the room felt like a cathedral of love. Delicate vines of greenery clung to the walls, and softly glowing lanterns bathed everything in a golden, intimate light. The scent of white roses, petals scattered lovingly along the aisle, mingled with fresh lavender, creating a fragrant path that led Hyra closer to Zayden. Zayden stood at the altar, his broad shoulders squared, but the faint tremble in his fingers as he adjusted his cufflinks betrayed his nerves. His eyes were fixed on the doorway, waiting for the woman who had changed everything, who had filled the hollow spaces in his soul with love, with purpose, with hope. He had never been one for displays of emotion, but today was different. Today was hers. Then she appeared. Hera stepped into the room, each movement deliberate and dreamlike. Her gown was simple yet regal, the white fabric shimmering under the gentle light. Purple accents adorned the hem, matching the delicate lavender crown nestled in her hair. She looked like she had descended from heaven, timeless and ethereal, and Zayden forgot to breathe. She wasn't just beautiful, she was beautiful, his in every way that mattered. As she moved down the aisle, time stretched. Each step echoed, the soft rustle of her gown whispering promises of forever. When her eyes met his, Zayden's heart beat wildly in his chest, as if it existed solely for her. He stood taller, the uncertainty he once carried vanishing in an instant. He knew without doubt this was his destiny. She was his destiny. When Hyra reached the altar, they locked eyes and the world around them fell away. The noise, the chaos, the guests, all faded. There was only the two of them, standing at the edge of forever. The officiant, a close friend of Zayden's, smiled warmly before speaking. "We are gathered here today," she began, her voice tender, "to witness the union of two souls, Zayden and Hyra, who have found in each other a rare and beautiful love. Today, they take the next step in their journey, one that will bind them for all eternity. But before we continue, let us hear their vows." Zayden's heart pounded, his palms grew damp, but his gaze never left Hyra. He'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Still, when he opened his mouth, words felt inadequate. How could he put into sentences what she meant to him? How could he explain how her love had mended parts of him he never even knew were broken? He took a breath. "Hyra," he said, voice thick with emotion, "when I first met you, I didn't believe in love. I thought it was something distant, unreachable, something that belonged to other people. But you showed me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a transformation. It changes you. It consumes you. It heals you. From the moment you walked into my life, I knew I would never be the same. You made me a better man. You taught me to love not only you, but myself." He paused, blinking back tears. "And so today, I make this promise. I will spend the rest of my life showing you how deeply I love you. I will cherish you, protect you, honor you, and stand beside you, no matter what life brings. You are my heart, my soul, my reason for breathing. I will love you always." A single tear slipped down Hyra's cheek, but her smile didn't falter. Her hands trembled slightly as she squeezed his, then began to speak. "Satan," she whispered, "when I met you, I was afraid. Afraid that love would hurt, that it would leave me broken, like it always had before. But you didn't just love me. You saw me. You accepted me. Flaws, fears, everything. You made me feel safe. You made me feel whole." Her voice wavered, but her gaze held steady. "In your arms I found home. I promise to stand beside you through every joy and every storm. I will love you with every breath I take. I will be your partner, your support, your best friend, for the rest of our lives." The air stilled. A sacred silence settled over the room, heavy with the weight of their words. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a culmination, a testament to redemption, to healing, to the kind of love that rewrites destinies. The officiant wiped her eyes. "By the power vested in me," she said softly, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Zayden, you may kiss your bride." Zayden leaned in, cupping Hyra's face as though she were made of light. Their kiss was slow, deep, more than affection. It was a vow, a seal on everything they had built and everything still to come. The room erupted in applause, but Hyra only heard the sound of his breath, felt the beat of his heart. The reception was a whirlwind of laughter, dancing, and celebration. But it was in the quiet moments that their love truly shone. Zayden never let go of her hand, his thumb brushing gentle circles into her skin. Every glance, every touch spoke louder than words. That night during their first dance, he leaned close and whispered, "This is just the beginning, Hyra. Our forever starts now." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "And I can't wait for every second of it." The days that followed were nothing short of a dream. Zayden and Hyra slipped into married life with ease, their world a tapestry of soft mornings, shared coffee, late-night talks, and laughter that echoed through their home. Their apartment, elegant and warm, painted in soft creams and lavender, was a reflection of them. Photos from their travels lined the walls, moments frozen in time. Zayden, once guarded and silent, became a man who spoke freely to her about everything, his dreams, his fears, their future. He had found his voice in her presence, and she listened with the same reverence one gives to sacred things. They didn't need grand gestures. Their love was stitched into the everyday, in burnt toast and shared umbrellas, in whispered "I love yous" as they drifted to sleep, in how they reached for each other without thinking. Zayden had changed. The man who once existed behind emotional walls now stood in the light. He smiled at sunsets. He found joy in morning rain and the smell of fresh bread. He had become someone who lived fully because of her. Hera had taught him that love was not just about passion or perfection. It was in the small moments, the mundane, the overlooked. She had taught him to open his heart, and in return, he gave her everything. Their love wasn't flawless, but it was real. It was unwavering. Through disagreements, exhaustion, or bad days, they always returned to each other. They were each other's anchor, each other's peace. On quiet nights, they sat on the balcony, stargazing with fingers entwined. Zayden would trace constellations with his finger, telling ancient stories, while Hyra leaned into him, feeling the kind of serenity she had never known before. They traveled the world, Paris, Venice, the mountains, the sea, but it was never the destination that mattered. It was the way they held hands through unfamiliar streets, the laughter they shared over street food, the whispered dreams beneath foreign skies. In the stillness of those nights, they'd talk about that first date and how everything had changed since then. And every time they ended with the same words, "I'm grateful," not just for the love, but for the choice to keep choosing each other, day after day. Because they weren't just lovers, They were home.